Welcome to the Emerald City Sportscast.
Wilson, as he throws deep downfield. It's going to be caught by Metcalf for the touchdown.
Hosted by longtime Northwest sports journalist Dan Viennes.
Here's the drive deep to left. He has done it again. Wow. Kyle Lewis, 3 games, 3 home runs. Mariners have a 5-2 lead.
Brought to you by Hollywood and Vines Recording Studio. World-class audio recording right in the heart of the Woodinville Winery District.
Wide receivers to either side. Russell takes the snap, drops back. He's going to throw down the middle. He's got a man. The ball is caught.
Game over, baby.
Touchdown. The game is over. The Seahawks are going back to the Super Bowl.
And now, broadcasting live from the Dan Cave Studios, here's your host, Dan Viennes.
Welcome back to the Emerald City Sportscast, everybody. I am your host, Dan Viennes, on what promises to be a sunny day here in Renton, Washington, just down the road from Seahawks headquarters. And we're going to have some fun today. My annual Seahawks Offseason Plan will be unveiled today. This is when I get to play GM. This is when I get my dream job for a moment. I get to be John Schneider. I get to be sitting in John Schneider's seat. And I will tell you what I would do to get the Seahawks ready for the 2021 season, to be competitive, to contend for a division title, to contend potentially for an NFC championship and beyond. Free agency, cap cuts, trades, draft, all of it. In detail. Coming up. But first, take it away, Ron Burgundy.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
And now, here's today's headlines, brought to you by FreeBets, the newest online sports betting comparison site. Check them out at freebets.us. Despite Major League Baseball opening up spring training camps on time, the minor league season will start later than usual. We've known for a while that single-A and double-A teams will proceed with a delayed start in 2021. But yesterday, MLB made it official that the start of the AAA season is being pushed back as well, likely to sometime in May. Despite a promising decline in daily COVID-19 case numbers, baseball officials are worried about having minor league players travel. The hope is that by May, the supply of vaccinations will be ample enough to allow all the players to get their shots. In the meantime, the alternate site concept will return, with each team able to convene about 24 of their top players for daily training at an off-site location. If minor league baseball can begin in May, the plan is to play a full season that would stretch into September. Things got tougher in the NFC West this week as J.J. Watt surprised everyone, by design, by signing a 2-year deal with the Arizona Cardinals worth up to $31 million with $23 million guaranteed. The 3-time Defensive Player of the Year was released by the Houston Texans a couple of weeks ago after 10 seasons in a salary cap move. The Pac-12 officially unveiled their 2021 football schedule yesterday in what hopes to be a full season of football after the abbreviated 2020 COVID-impacted slate. The Washington Huskies open their schedule at home versus Montana September 4th before traveling to Michigan to play the Wolverines September 11th in an intriguing non-conference matchup. Meanwhile, the Washington State Cougars, their opener is against Utah State in Pullman September 4th, while their big non-conference tilt happens later. They host BYU at Martin Stadium October 23rd. And after not being able to play each other last year for the first time in 76 years, the Huskies and Cougs are set to face off in the 2021 Apple Cup in Seattle in what has become their traditional slot, the Friday after Thanksgiving, November 26th. And the Seattle Storm unveiled a new look and logo yesterday as they prepare to defend their 4th WNBA title. Reigning Finals MVP Breanna Stewart returns. And Sue Bird just keeps on ticking. She's back for her 20th season at the point. The big addition for the Storm this year, 3-time All-Star and 15-year veteran Candace Dupree was added in free agency, When will their title defense begin? Still up in the air. The WNBA season usually begins in May, but there are reports that it could be pushed back a bit this year. And now we check on the latest episode of As Russell's World Turns. And I actually tried looking up the old theme music for As the World Turns, the old classic soap opera. But A, they apparently change their theme every 3 or 4 years, so there's a bunch of different versions. And B, none of them were great. Like, I guess I had this image in my head of like this really dramatic background music that I would play. But their theme song kind of sucked. But this might become a weekly thing over the course of the offseason. And again, I'll start with this disclaimer. The mouth isn't quite working this morning. If you think we all need to shut up and stop talking about this, well, then you're just in denial, or maybe that's wishful thinking, or you just don't want to face the truth. Because the fact is that I wouldn't be talking about this if there wasn't new information. And what's happening now on a week-in, week-out basis, it seems, whether it's being leaked from the team or whether it's being leaked from Russell Wilson's side, there's new light being shed on sort of what's happening behind the curtain. From reputable sources, legitimate sources. This week, from the highly respected Albert Breer of SI and formerly NFL Network and Pro Football Talk, and he writes an incredible column for the Monday Morning Quarterback. And he had an insider report, pretty lengthy one, that shed light on the end of the season meeting that Wilson had with Pete Carroll and John Schneider, in which he outlined his desire to take more control of his future with the team, and specifically with what's happening with the roster and on the field. And according to Breer, according to his sources that have knowledge of this meeting, Wilson outlined 3 specific main objectives. He had a checklist. 1, he wanted a new offensive philosophy that maximized his talents as a player. That one was apparently fulfilled. Shane Waldron was hired away from the division rival Rams, and Wilson reportedly signed off on Waldron and is excited about the addition, despite the fact that he said he was upset that Brian Schottenheimer was let go. That might have come more from a place of they're friends, they're close, and that might have just been him backing up his buddy. But the offense that Waldron plans to install, apparently, is in line with Wilson's vision for what he thinks the Seahawks should do on offense. Number 2, he wants to see upgrades to the offensive line. We knew this. This isn't new information. This has been the focal point of most of his public offseason comments. But Breer gets more detailed. He says Wilson wants to see, and this is a quote, a high-end piece that the team sinks real capital into, end quote. So presumably, that would be a top-shelf free agent. The Seahawks really don't have the draft capital or expendable players that would be attractive to other teams in which they can go out and get a top-end center or guard. Let's be clear, center and left guard are the focal points here. Left tackle's in good shape with Dwayne Brown. Aging, but played as well last year as he has since he joined the Seahawks. The Seahawks manage him physically really well. Brandon Shell was a big upgrade over Jermaine Ifedi at right tackle last year. Really nice free agent signing. Let's not forget about Brandon Shell when we're ripping the Seahawks for their poor offensive line free agent signings and draft picks, okay? Speaking of which, Damien Lewis, the all-rookie team right guard last year at LSU. Fantastic value in the 3rd round. So it's center where Ethan Posick is a free agent, and it's guard where Mike Upati is retired. He was broken down last year. Jordan Simmons is a limited player. Phil Haynes was drafted in the 4th round 2 years ago, hasn't been able to stay healthy. And I'm not sure what the team thinks of of James. I'm blanking on his first name right now. They've played him at tackle. They've played him at guard. They've played him at right guard. He's played well in spurts at guard after being drafted as a tackle, potentially the left tackle of the future. So left guard or center has to be upgraded. There's been talk of bringing Posett back, and maybe if you put a stud left guard next to him, between Lewis and a guy like Brandon Scherf has been mentioned, or Joe Thuney at left guard, that maybe that could work. But that's the focal point. And this is the first indication we've gotten from really, again, reputable, well-sourced, well-connected journalists that Wilson wants to see him go out and make a splash in free agency. Now, when he said this, he had to know that meant that some tough moves were going to have to be made. Some popular players were going to have to be traded. Because the salary cap, right now, the salary cap space just is not there. Number 3, he wants communication and agreement on the direction of the franchise. Now, that we knew as well. He's been open about that. He wants to have a place at the table. Here are my thoughts on those and that list. First of all, they've given indications that they're at least willing to concede 2 of the 3 points already. Despite the fact we haven't heard anything from the Seahawks. And this is frustrating for some people, but it's how they operate. You know, some people like to point out that when Aaron Rodgers came out after the NFC Championship game and said, hey, you know, maybe I'm not happy with my situation. Maybe I won't be here very long. The team has some decisions to make. You know, Matt LaFleur and their GM came out within hours. I think it was the next day. And said, hey, we want Aaron to be here long term, and we're gonna make sure he's taken care of. We've heard crickets from Pete Carroll and John Schneider. And we probably won't hear anything from them until they usually give a press conference just before the start of free agency, which is 2 weeks from today. But they've given indications that they're at least willing to meet 2 of the 3. Let me handle the third point first. There's already signs that the team is taking his ideas about the direction of the franchise. The Waldron hire is an indication of that they may be willing to appease him, right? Because what do we see early in the search? We saw the names that really made us worry. More of the same. Pete Carroll going to his cronies. Guys like Anthony Lynn. Guys who are going to pound the football and be unimaginative on offense. Doug Peterson, who used to be thought of as a genius play caller, major question marks the last couple of years. Adam Gase, don't even know where that came from. And then it shifted, and they started looking at guys like Matt Kafka out of Kansas City, Andy Reid disciple. Right? And we heard Waldron's name. And we heard some others. Ken Dorsey. Younger, more innovative, more forward-thinking offensive minds. There was a shift there. And then they end up hiring Waldron, and Wilson signed off on it. So point 3, we've already seen signs. Point 1's been taken care of. We're going to find out about point 2 very shortly. As I said, the league year starts 2 weeks from today. Now, the meeting itself, I found this report interesting because it kind of contradicts this idea that the team would be mad at him, right? Or blindsided by these comments, right? I mean, if they've had a meeting, they know where he stands. Not necessarily. I believe these reports from really reliable sources and league sources, and even one that I have knowledge of, that they just didn't think Russ was going to go public with this. They thought this was all going to happen behind the scenes. So they had the meeting. They kind of found some common ground, or they presumably left this meeting, both sides, feeling good about it. And then Russ went on his little rampage after the Super Bowl and manipulated media time that was set aside to talk about the Walter Payton Award and turned it into his, kind of got on his soapbox about what he wanted to see. They're not happy that he took it public. So, number 2 could be the biggest point of all 3 of these. Because if the Seahawks go into free agency next week and do what they always do, restructure a couple deals, free up a little space, maybe sign a guy like, bring back Posick and sign a guy like Forrest Lamp, who was a former high draft pick of the Chargers, battled some injuries, a reclamation project, someone on the cheap. Or, this is what really would concern me, and it would be a very Seahawk thing to do. Hey, we think with Waldron and his offensive line coach Dickerson, he brought up from the Rams with him to work with Mike Solari, we think that this new system of getting the ball out quicker, using the tight ends more of a short rhythm passing game, running the football, we think with the talent on hand, we have a good competition at left guard, that the pieces are here. I don't think that's going to make Russ happy. If that's what happens this offseason, they bring Ethan Posick back and open up a competition at left guard with the guys that are on the roster already, then we could be looking at, what happens with a post-June 1 trade designation. Coming out of the draft, which teams are still looking for a quarterback and have some assets and are willing to make a move? So we're going to find out. Will they go big on a center or guard in free agency? Should they go big? I'll unveil my offseason plan coming up in just a bit. Let's take a short break, come back and check on the Mariners' first week of spring training. You're listening to the Emerald City Sportscast on the 365 Sportscast Network. Looking for a place of inspiration to record your next musical or vocal project? Why not do it in the middle of wine country? Hollywood and Vines Recording Studio is a 4-room boutique recording studio in the heart of Woodinville Tourist District on Hollywood Hill. Within walking distance of over 100 different wine, beer, and spirit tasting rooms, this peaceful setting offers a respite from the rat race of everything around it. The studio features 14-foot ceilings throughout and a large main tracking room, along with separate isolation rooms for drum tracking and vocals. Featuring a talented crew of freelance engineers and an impressive array of industry-leading equipment, my friends at Hollywood and Vine Studios can assist with your audio tracking, mixing, and mastering pursuits. To find out more or to book a session, email Kevin at hollywood-vines.com, call 206-235-8125, or visit hollywood-vines.com.
You're listening to the Emerald City Sportscast, presented by Hollywood and Vines Recording Studio. And now, here's Dan.
The Mariners dropped to 1-1 in spring games, early spring action, with a 6-1 loss to the Indians yesterday. Spring is more about individual performances, of course, and yesterday, Yusei Kikuchi showed us he's bringing back the leg kick hesitation in his delivery. Thought they scrapped that last year for good reason, but it worked. He used all his pitches. Breaking stuff looked great against Cleveland. Sat 95 on his fastball, touched 96. Struck out 3 over his 2 innings while giving up 1 run on 1 hit. He looked good. Too early to focus too much on anyone, but Mitch Haniger has had a hit in each game, including a double yesterday in his first live action back after missing most of the last 2 seasons due to a series of injuries. It is good to see Mitch Haniger back on the diamond. And 20-year-old Julio Rodriguez had the walk-off in their first game to win it. The 3rd best prospect in baseball, according to Baseball America's Top 100 rankings. He has had a hit in each of the first 2 games. The M's face the Cubs today at noon Pacific time. James Paxton was supposed to get his first start in his return after the Mariners signed him to a free agent deal weeks ago. That has been pushed back. They say there's nothing wrong with his health. They're just trying to lay out the rotation to manage innings. He'll be pushed back a couple of days. LJ Newsome will get the start today on the hill for the M's against the Cubs. That's at noon 05 Pacific time. By the way, a message for any baseball fans out there, any of you who may listen to this for maybe Seahawks content, but you're Chicago White Sox fans, check out the Shy Sox Show with host Chris McCarthy talking all things White Sox immediately preceding this show on the 365 Sportscast Network. So that's at 9 a.m. Pacific time, noon Eastern time, every Wednesday. To listen to the 365 Sportscast Network, if you're listening to this on podcast or on the YouTube channel and you want to listen to that show, you can check it out live. Go to 365sportscast.com. You can listen live there or download the app for your phone. That's the best way to do it. Apps available in both the iPhone, the Apple App Store, as well as the Android store for Android devices as well. All right, let's talk some football, okay? So, the offseason plan. This is fun. And when you get into this stuff, you have to get pretty detailed. You really have to dig into salary caps and try to estimate some free agent value. It's an inexact science. So I just want to preface this by saying that off the top, because this is for fun. All right. So if you get pissed about anything that I suggest here, I suggest you try your own because it takes a lot of work. It really does. But it's a lot of fun. What I use, you could do all this stuff manually, but it's so much easier. There's a small subscription fee on an annual basis. I think it's $20 a year to get all of their features unlocked. I'm talking about fanspeak.com. And some of you may have used their draft simulator before. They were one of the first to really come out with a good interactive mock draft simulator. And it was one of my first favorites. A couple of other entities over the last couple of years have surpassed them as far as features and their draft boards and some of the accuracy of that and ability to make trades. Pro Football Network's I really, really enjoy and prefer over the others. Actually, the Draft Network has made some upgrades to theirs. Theirs is great. The mock draft database has a cool simulator, but Fanspeak puts it all together and basically uses a computer model that runs the rest of the league for you when you choose your team. You can choose multiple teams too if you really want to get crazy. One of these days, I thought it'd be fun to take some time and do the whole NFC West. But I wouldn't be able to do that objectively, right? I would probably make some really questionable free agent signings and draft picks for the other three teams. But here's what I did. So we all know Seahawks only have 4 draft picks this year, a 2, 4, 5, 6. No 1 or 3 because of the Jamal Adams trade. They're up against the cap. Essentially, let's say no cap space. There's a little bit, but effective cap space, they're less than $1 million. It varies slightly depending on what site you look at. So you got to free up some cap space. And that means you have to cut some guys. Ideally, when you're in a position like this, there are some guys on your roster, like Justin Britt was a couple of years ago, that makes sense to cut, that you can easily upgrade for a lot less money, and there isn't a lot of dead cap money, and you get good caps. There isn't that guy on the Seahawks roster this year. There's one. Well, there's 2, actually. And I'll get to that in a minute. There's Carlos Dunlap, who you could cut, and you would get all of his, I think it's $14.5 million. You would get all that money back. And there is some talk of doing that. And if it hasn't happened by next week, I'm going to dive into that subject with Carlos Dunlap. It had been assumed when they acquired him last year for a 7th-round pick from the Bengals and a player and he was so good and he fit in so well that they would just extend him. Lowers cap hit a little bit this year, tack a couple years on, even at the age of 32, keeps himself in tremendous shape. Really great addition, loved being here. And I'm sure he'd love to be back and play in front of full stadiums. But there's been talk of cutting him and then re-signing him to a cheaper deal if they can't come to an agreement. Don't know if there's been negotiations. He just had a birthday. If you look at his Instagram, he was off somewhere in the Cayman Islands, I think, or something, having a good time. So I don't know if there's been negotiations, but if they don't go the Seahawks way or they make him an offer and he turns it down and wants to test free agency, it would seem to make sense for the team and the player to do an extension. But there's a lot of edge players out there, interesting edge players that could be as effective and maybe even cost a little less or be looking for less money. And there's sure to be more over the next couple of weeks as teams make cuts. So that's one, and Dwayne Brown's the other one. But you can't cut Dwayne Brown. There's nobody on the roster to play left tackle, and there aren't the resources to go get a good one. Okay? So maybe Dunlap, but for the sake of my offseason plan, I'm keeping him. I didn't even try to restructure his deal because when I made some of these other moves, as you'll see in a second, I didn't have to. But I could have. So just keep that in mind. Kep Carlos Dunlap. So here's the first thing I did. There were a couple of little cuts you can make. They've already cut Chance Warmack. So I think that salary cap money's already been accounted for. But in fan speak, he was still showing up as a salary against the cap. And I cut Jordan Simmons. We have extra bodies there, and we're about to add more. That freed up a little bit of money. So the big thing is trades. And if the Seahawks are going to make any impact this offseason, in my opinion, they have to make a couple of trades. And they're going to hurt. There's been a lot of talk the last couple of weeks of Tyler Lockett being traded. And man, he's a popular player because he's such a good dude. And he's such a great football player. 29 years old in his prime. Last year of his deal, but there'd be a market for him for sure. But that's a perfect example of a trade that will be wildly unpopular with the general Seahawk fan. The nerdy Seahawk fan that loves this kind of stuff, like me, probably won't be as mad because they'll see the value in it if the return is adequate enough. Bobby Wagner's another one. When's he going to start slowing down? Is it worth keeping him on the roster at $14 million when you drafted an inside linebacker with the first pick last year? And I know Jordan Brooks can play outside. He did last year. He can be effective. His best spot is inside. And I think we all saw the talent last year. Some of you may be offended by what I'm about to say, but you could slide Jordan Brooks into the Mike spot and the drop-off would be minimal. You'd have a younger player. At this point in his career, a faster player. A cheaper player. You'd save some money and you could put those resources elsewhere. And then Jamal Adams is the other one. Are the Seahawks willing to pay him $15 million to make him the highest paid safety in football? Jamal Adams wants to be paid like more than a safety. He wants to be paid closer to what a defensive end makes, the $20 million range, because he had 9.5 sacks last year. Well, again, as Chris Clough pointed out on the show a month ago when I had him on, as much as they blitz Jamal Adams, there's a lot of guys on that roster that could get 9.5 sacks. Marquise Blair, when he comes back from his knee injury, could get 9 sacks if you blitzed him 30% of the time like they did with Jamal Adams. So I think they're going to make at least one of those types of moves that might be a little unpopular, but will allow them to do some other things and address some other areas. I got really aggressive because, again, this is what I would do, not what I think they will do. And I would trade all three of those guys. Bobby's not getting any younger. You just can't justify that salary. When you drafted a middle linebacker in the first round last year. Jamal Adams, I'm not a smart enough X's and O's guy to know if there's any validity to these reports out there that he's not a great scheme fit. Certainly, I love his intensity. I love his competitive nature. I worry a little bit about a guy like that if you pay him. He kind of has a little bit of Cam Chancellor, Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas in him. Edge-wise, some of that can be good, but will it get out of hand? Can he be durable? And I'm just going to tell you right now, before I tell you what I got in return for these players, the Seahawks aren't even going to come close to getting back in value what they gave up, 2 firsts and a third. They're just not. You have to accept that and move on and see the benefits of trading him now in cap savings and some value coming back. And then I'm going to make that Tyler Lockett trade. It just makes too much sense. Because here's the thing. Lockett's in the last year of his deal. DK Metcalf is eligible for an extension next year. It wasn't a first-round pick, so you're not talking about a four-year contract with a fifth-year option. That clock is ticking. You cannot have Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf up for extensions the same offseason. Metcalf might be looking at a Julio Jones type of deal, a Michael Thomas type of deal, $100 million if he has another year in 2021 like he did in 2020. And Tyler Lockett, 90, 100 catches a year. In this Shane Waldron offense, I would love to see it. But it's one of the few opportunities on the roster to free up some space and get some assets back in return. So here's what I did. Traded Bobby Wagner to the New York Jets. This makes all the sense in the world. Robert Saleh has worked with him. Needs a guy, a leader in the middle of that defense, try to turn them around. At this point in his career, with his salary and age, you're not going to get a first-round pick for him. And I might have been a little too optimistic here, but I'm spitballing. I'm guessing here. But the Jets have so much draft capital. They can afford to give something up. And they have so much cap space. Wagner's salary would hardly make a dent. I think they have $80 million in cap space. They could easily absorb his salary and still have other things they can do. And they still have guys they can cut, some pretty bloated contracts. So what we get back for Bobby Wagner is a second-round pick from the Jets and a future third. So they're third next year. Trying to add some assets for next year as well because there's no first-round pick. And we got the higher of their 2 seconds, the second pick in the second round. I think that's pretty good return for Bobby Wagner. And you're clearing $14, $15 million off the books. Then I'm going to trade Jamal Adams to the Dallas Cowboys. From a football perspective, this makes sense. The Cowboys need stars on defense. They need a leader on defense. They need a playmaker on defense. That secondary has been a mess for a while. Now, I did this before the reports came out. Jane Slater reported that there's some history between the Cowboys and the Seahawks. That last year at the trade deadline, the Seahawks tried to acquire defensive end Ellerson Smith. We know that. But now we're finding out through Slater that according to a team official, the Cowboys would not make that trade for any price because they're still ticked off that the Seahawks held so firmly on what they wanted for Earl Thomas 2 years ago. That kind of pettiness at this level, when you have a chance to improve your team, that's just weird, man. If I'm a Cowboys fan, that pisses me off. That's not how I want my team operating. So I don't know if they'd be willing to do a trade for Jamal Adams. But again, you're not going to get anything near what you gave up for him. So I've got 2 2s and Michael Gallup, wide receiver, in the last year of his deal. Cowboys loaded with weapons. CeeDee Lamb was great as a rookie. So that's the 12th pick in the second round this year and a future 2. So now you've added a second and a third for next year too. We're kind of layering this. Then the Tyler Lockett trade. I feel like this is an overwhelming return for a guy with 1 year left on his deal. But this was a specific deal that was suggested by Chad Forbes. And sometimes I think Chad says some ridiculous things, but a lot of times, weeks later, they turn out to be pretty accurate. He reported, first of all, that the Dolphins have specific interest in Tyler Lockett. They think he would be a great weapon to add to that offense to give Tua, a little outlet. But he suggested that Miami has an extra 2. He suggested both of their 2s and guard Solomon Kinley. And that intrigued me. Kinley's a guy who has some athletic limitations as far as his lateral agility, coming out of college, out of Georgia, big left guard, 340 pounds. A lot of the scouting reports mention maybe he needs to trim just a little bit of weight to kind of gain some of that mobility, but that he's stout at the point of attack. He can handle any bull rush. He's a beast in the run game. What are the Seahawks looking to do this year? Match up with Aaron Donald and the 49ers defensive line and the Cardinals defensive line that now has J.J. Watt, and he rushes from inside sometimes. And you can do this, and it makes sense. Now, to be honest, another trade that I've seen out there suggested a lot on Seahawks Twitter is let's just take one of the 2s, hopefully the higher one, the 4th pick in the second round. The other one's the 18th pick in the second round. And let's take Robert Hunt off their hands. Dolphins have quite a few young linemen, and they're all guys that have been attached to the Seahawks in the past. Their backup center is Michael Dieter out of Wisconsin, who you heard me talk a lot on the Dan Cave podcast a couple years ago about as a potential mid-round draft target of the Seahawks. Last year, Robert Hunt met with the Seahawks at the Senior Bowl. Small college guy that's played guard and tackle. They've got him at right tackle. Let's settle for the 50th pick and Robert Hunt. I don't know if they're going to part with Hunt. I think they see him as a long-term stud at right tackle who they can pair with their rookie left tackle from last year and really have a nice set of bookends. So Tyler Lockett to the Dolphins. I'm going to take this trade as Chad Forbes suggested it. The 4th pick in the second round and the 18th pick. So we have added the 2nd pick in the second round, the 4th pick in the second round, the 12th pick in the second round, the 18th pick in the second round, and then the 56th pick, their native pick. So the Seahawks have now amassed 5 second-round picks in this draft by doing this and cleared a ton of cap space. So what are we going to do with that? Well, we're going to sign some free agents. First, I'm going to bring back a couple of guys that I think play key roles at an affordable price on the current roster. I'm going to bring back Cedric Ogbuehi. Swing tackle, was hurt the first part of last year. Can play left tackle if Dwayne Brown goes down. Can play right tackle. And when Shell got hurt last year, had the high ankle sprain, Ogbuehi, before he got hurt, looked really good in a couple of short stretches. He's a guy that they talked about when they signed him, being in that old George Fant role of the extra big jumbo tight end. So I'm going to bring him back $2.5 million a year on a one-year deal. And I'm going to bring back Benson Mayowa. I think something clicked with him about halfway through the season, and certainly with Dunlap playing off of him, he was outstanding the second half of the year. Plays the run well as well. Gives you an extra guy off the edge. One-year deal, $6 million. I'm also going to sign Sheldon Day. This is a guy I really liked coming out of Notre Dame a couple years. He's bounced around the league now. He's been with the Niners. He's an interior, more of a 3 technique, kind of a smaller defensive tackle that at his best can penetrate, but he's really battled some injuries. I think you can get him on a one-year deal for as little as $3 million. So I signed him. Now the big signings. I'm letting Chris Carson walk because I think someone's going to pay him more money than makes sense for the Seahawks. But I'm going to address the running back situation. I'm going to sign Jamal Williams, backup running back from Green Bay. Young, in his prime. I think we can get him on a one-year deal for $4.8 million. Hope that he establishes some value, and then he may want to test the free agent market next year. He catches the ball well. And then I'm going to pilfer the Rams free agent pool. I'm going to bring Josh Reynolds with me as a wide receiver. $6 million a year cap hit. And Gerald Everett as a tight end for about $4.5 million. Again, don't know if these are accurate numbers, but they were accepted by FanSpeak, and they'll reject things. They kind of use estimates from Spot Track and Over the Cap. Those are going to those players are going to lend some continuity to Shane Waldron as he brings that offense up from the Rams. Reynolds, 26 years old, tall receiver with some speed, can work over the middle of the field, and Gerald Everett, outstanding pass catcher, pretty decent blocker too. You add him to Will Dissly and Colby Parkinson, that's a really nice tight end group. And then my big marquee signing that's going to make Russell Wilson really happy. I'm going to sign Corey Linsley away from the Green Bay Packers. Doesn't sound like he's going to be able to go back to them. They're just not going to be able to afford it. Sign him to a 3-year deal with a $15 million average annual value. Would make him the highest paid center in the league. But his first year cap hit is going to be $9.1 million. So now you've got Solomon Kinley added to the mix at left guard, presumably to be your starter. Big, strong left guard. And Corey Linsley, one of the best centers in football, is taking over at the pivot. That's your free agent class. And you didn't use all your money either. Now, what are we going to do with all those draft picks? We're going to go over the Seahawks draft in my offseason plan coming up after this. Stay tuned. Online gamers, have you checked out PSX Extreme? If not, you're missing out. PSX Extreme is a cutting-edge gaming website providing you with everything you need to know about the latest and greatest games. You'll find up-to-the-minute news about the gaming industry, as well as in-depth reviews of all the coolest games. The writing staff at PSX Extreme will also keep you informed on all the rumors about new games in development and impending releases. So if you can put down the controller just for a second, do yourself a favor and check out psxextreme.com. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Emerald City Sportscast. We are working through my Seahawks offseason plan. So we've made some cuts. We've traded away Bobby Wagner, Tyler Lockett, and Jamal Adams. We've gotten a bunch of second-round picks in return and some players. And now we're going to draft. And for the sake of this exercise, I didn't make any trade downs. When they were offered to me, I rejected them all because with 5 second-round picks, I think this will give you a good enough idea of the type of draft haul they could reel in with these types of assets. Don't get hung up on these names and where they were drafted, because there's no telling how their draft board, and there were multiple draft boards that FanSpeak makes available to you from different sources, about 10 of them. And I went over some of them and kind of picked the one that I thought most closely mirrored what I'm seeing out there from some of the other really well-respected sites. But there's no way of knowing how the NFL sees these players this year more than ever, with a limited ability to see them play. Some players didn't play at all last year. They opted out. There's no combine this year. So these draft ratings could be all over the board. But just based on the names that were available when I made these picks, this is what I went with. And if they're not these names, they can be others, right? So the first one, second pick in the second round, and I didn't research how to pronounce his name, but I'm just going to call him Levi O out of Washington. Husky fans are going to know who he is. Onwuzurike, is that close? Interior defensive lineman, stud. A lot of mock drafts have him going at the end of the first round, in the 25 range. Seahawks have a need there. Jaron Reed would like to see them extend him. I didn't do it in this exercise. That's another way you could free up some cap space. He was outstanding last year again, still young. Would like to see them sign him to a longer-term contract. Poona Ford's a restricted free agent this year. I would bring him back in this plan, give him a second-round tender. After all these draft picks and free agency, by the way, in my scenario, still have almost $12 million in cap space, so you could easily tender and sign Poona Ford. Brian Monet is a really nice one technique for them. But I'm going to add a guy that's dynamic and young, and they need to do this every year. There's a couple of positions, but especially both lines that you need to address every year in the draft and constantly be building young depth and guys that can be potential starters down the line. With the 4th pick in the second round, Sam Cosmi out of Texas. Now, he might not play as a rookie. And this is something I wanted the Seahawks to address last year. But this is Dwayne Brown's successor. And if you do this, now I wouldn't extend Dwayne Brown. I would see how things go. This guy's a big-time potential franchise left tackle, and you'd get him at second-round money for 3 years? He could take over for Brown next year and be your long-term starter, or play as a rookie if Brown goes down, because we know that he battles some injuries at times. The 12th pick in the second round. This may seem like a little bit of excess. Tight end Brevin Jordan out of Miami. The Seahawks are reportedly targeting tight ends in this offseason. There are reports that have linked them to interest in Jonnu Smith. And there are reports, I saw one just the other day. And these are the kind of rumors I love. A guy that I follow on Twitter who claims that, and he doesn't do this stuff very often, claims that he's good friends with an offensive Seahawks player who tells him there's mutual interest between Everett and the Seahawks. So that might seem, they've carried 4 tight ends before when they brought Luke Wilson back last year. But I think with how they're going to be emphasized in this offense, you can almost justify carrying 4 tight ends, would only need to carry 5 receivers. And they really like Brevin Jordan. There's been reported interest and I don't know about contact, but interest between the Seahawks and Jordan. Real athletic, pass-catching tight end out of Miami. With the 24th pick in the second round, loved getting him in this range. Don't know if he'll still be here at this point, but Javonte Williams. You heard Rob Staten talk about him when I had him on the show a few weeks back. He just looks like a Seahawks running back. He's got the size, the speed, he's smooth, good cutback ability, catches the ball well. Out of North Carolina, can do everything. He's your long-term answer at the running back position. This one probably isn't going to happen, but again, I went by the board as it fell to me in this draft. And with the 26th pick in the second round, Mac Jones out of Alabama. Now, here's the thing. Mac Jones is that guy right now that's getting as much buzz in the draft as anyone. A couple weeks ago, you saw him showing up at the end of the first round in some mock drafts. Then moved up to the middle of the first round. Now I'm hearing that he could be taken before Trey Lance. Some people think that, the kid out of North Dakota State, that he could go in the top 15. To me, of all these quarterbacks, other than Trevor Lawrence, who is essentially signed and sealed in Jacksonville, Mac Jones looks the most like a Pete Carroll quarterback, and I think he would fit really well in that Shane Waldron system. His teammates talk about his sneaky athleticism, that he's more mobile than people think. But it's his decision-making, his accuracy, how smart he is, how quickly he picked up that offense at the Senior Bowl, even though he couldn't play because he was banged up a little bit. He seems like the kind of guy that would be perfect to groom behind Russell Wilson, something they've never done. Some of that was to appease him. But they need to do this. Would send a statement too. Kind of like the Jordan Love thing in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, right? Hey, Russ, we hope this works out, but if it doesn't, here's a second-round kid behind you that we really like. Now we move into the third round, pick number, the 40th pick in the third round with comp picks added in. Keith Taylor, you know him well, cornerback out of Washington. Had an outstanding, didn't really have a lot of production at Washington in terms of picks, but was the best defensive back on the field at the Senior Bowl this year. Fits the Seahawks' ideal size specs on the outside. May not need to start as a rookie, but he's a long-term starter with J.R. Reed on the other side. Real exciting player. And there's a need at that position. If you let Shaq Griffin go, obviously in my plan you do. I don't think they can afford to bring him back. In the fourth round, wide receiver Shi Smith out of South Carolina. Another guy that looked good in the Senior Bowl. Daniel Jeremiah is really high on him. Smaller slot guy, really explosive. He would essentially be a cheaper, much younger Tyler Lockett. Similar size. Outstanding hands, outstanding route runner, really quick, really shifty with the ball. And best of all, his best attribute is what he does after he catches the ball. And that's never been a strength of Seahawks offenses because they weren't designed to put receivers in that position. But the Shane Waldron offense is. And Shi Smith would be a lot of fun there. In the 5th round, I'm taking tackle Alaric Jackson out of Iowa. A year ago, he and Tristan Wirfs out of Iowa were kind of seen close to being on the same level. Jackson's been a little inconsistent. There's some thought, though, that he would fit better at guard. Now, I would take him and I would give him a shot to play tackle because with Brandon Shell in the last year of his deal, if he could be that right tackle, and he's a mauler, then you have a young starter moving forward. If not, make him a guard. Give you some young depth moving forward as a guy that could either maybe do both. Maybe he could even push Solomon Kinley at left guard as a rookie. He's a beast. In the 5th round, love this pick. Ellerson Smith out of Northern Iowa also turned some heads at the Senior Bowl. Small school guy, 6'7", long arms. Really reminds me of Max Crosby, who it kills me the Seahawks didn't get 2 years ago. I thought the Raiders drafted him way too high, but he's proven to be one of the best draft picks of the Mike Mayock, John Gruden era there. Ellerson Smith, long arms, can really get after the quarterback. Love that pick in the 5th round. And then in the 6th round, I just went with another running back, Brendan Knox out of Marshall. Big kid, over 6 foot, 220, 230 pounds. Not real shifty, but runs really hard. Just add that to the running back competition, especially with Rashad Penny's durability issues. So what has this done overall? Again, still about $12 million in cap space left. So in this scenario, I could have kept Jamal Adams. Would have cost me the 12th pick in the 2nd round would have cost me Brevin Jordan, but that's the pick that was kind of a luxury pick anyway because you've already signed Gerald Everett in free agency. But now think about this offensive line. Dwayne Brown at left tackle. Solomon Kinley at left guard, presumably. Maybe Alaric Jackson pushes him there as a rookie. Corey Linsley at center. Damien Lewis in his 2nd year at left guard, or right guard. Brandon Shell at right tackle. Your tight end room: Will Dissly, Colby Parkinson, Gerald Everett, Brevin Jordan. Look at your wide receiver group. You traded Tyler Lockett, and that hurt. Right? DK Metcalf, Michael Gallup. You add Shi Smith to that. You sign Josh Reynolds as a free agent. That's a damn good receiver group. On defense, you add a young starting level cornerback in Keith Taylor. You load up the running back room to make sure that you can run effectively as you want to. Jamal Williams, the Williams brothers, they'd be called. Javonte Williams out of North Carolina could be your lead back moving forward. Jamal Williams out of Green Bay trying to prove he can be a number 1 running back. You still have Rashad Penny in the mix. They brought Dixon back. They still have Homer. They still have DJ Dallas. So now you've got a lot of competition in the running back room, real versatile guys that can do it all. You've added to your defensive line with your first pick. A little bit of depth with Sheldon Day. You bring Benson Mayowa back. You keep Carlos Dunlap. I didn't even add another outside free agent edge player here, but you could easily do that. A lot of guys going to be out there. You've drafted potentially your quarterback of the future. You added another young, dynamic edge player. You've drafted your starting left tackle, the future Dwayne Brown's successor. These are the kinds of things that you can do if you have the guts to make the moves that I believe the Seahawks need to make this offseason. And again, we're going to find out really, really soon because 2 weeks from today is when the new league year starts. Free agency starts. There's a couple days of legal tampering that's allowed. That's when a lot of these deals are made, and that's when a lot of the news breaks, and then you can start signing guys. Again, if the Seahawks go cheap in free agency this year like they usually do, don't sign a significant offensive lineman, they can try to address it in the draft. In the 2nd round, it's a good draft for interior offensive linemen, but you're not going to address center and guard there. And I don't think Russell likes the pieces in place, or he wouldn't be saying what he's saying. So we're going to know a lot more 3 weeks from now, after the first wave, the first week of free agency comes off the board. If the Seahawks go sign a Corey Linsley or a Brandon Scherf or a Joe Thuney, even an Alex Mack, older guy who costs a little less, shorter-term deal, that, to me, would be a significant sign that they want to make Russell Wilson happy and keep him around. If not, they try to play it cool and keep as many players as they can, and just try to hope on some draft picks and hope the new system gets the most out of what they have on hand. We might not just be talking about a 2022 Russell Wilson trade scenario being extremely real. We might be talking about post-June 1st. Let me know what you think. Follow me on Twitter at Seahawks Forever. Give me some feedback. Hit me up. DM me if you want to, or tweet it out so we can debate it publicly. Let me know what you hate or love, or what you would do differently in your Seahawks offseason plan. Thank you, Kevin Jablonski, Alex Moretti, FreeBets US, and Jordan Van Beek for their support of the program. Check out Jordan's Twitch channel at twitch.com/geekbeak. Follow me, as I said, on Twitter at Seahawks Forever. Go to the YouTube channel, Emerald City Sportscast, and subscribe to that. Please. Have some technical difficulties the last couple weeks. Haven't been able to do the video live streams. Hopefully those will be back next week. And if you miss this show live, you can always catch it again as a podcast on all the big podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbean, Spotify, whatever you use. Subscribe so you get notifications of new episodes. Listen to it as many times as you want. And please, leave a review. That'd be awfully nice of you. I am Dan Viennes. This is the Emerald City Sportscast. You're listening to the 365 Sportscast Network. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.